for tuning in. I'm Nivedna Prabhu and you're watching Voice News Network Canada. Today in the studios, I'm joined in by Dr. Azad Kaushik, who is the President of National Alliance for Indo-Canadian, and he's also an active member in our community. Absolute pleasure to have you with us in our studios, Dr. Kaushik.
Thank you, Nivedna.
You're, of course, always talking to us about everything related to the community and news related to the community. Today, on today's show, of course, we're talking about the vote shift in the Indo-Canadian community. What and how can you tell us about this?
Well, Nivedna, you know, I mean, you talked about our community.
Right.
There is no doubt Indo-Canadian community is a vibrant community. I mean, you take any field, be it business, academia, politics, our people are engaged in all kinds of activities very successfully. So that speaks a lot about our community as such. So that's why you often see us discussing these kind of issues.
Right.
But you raise a very, very important matter today, and that is of concern to all Canadians. Indo-Canadian community, in fact, had been at crossroads, looking for a political space within the Canadian system.
Right.
And this has to do that the relations between Canada and India were frozen in time. And the community felt and came together that as to how we can enhance Canada-India relationship. And I would say this is a matter not just of a few years. It is last 15, 20, 25 years that community has been very active in trying to enhance or even to bring this Canada-Indian relationship out of that frozen box, let me say it this way. So finally, you see it culminated in 2015 actually, that Prime Minister Modi was invited and hosted by Prime Minister Harper. Right. And Prime Minister Harper actually thawed the ice that existed between India and Canada. And you can imagine, I mean, how difficult it might have been that it is after 42 years that Indian Prime Minister visited Canada. Right. And that was a remarkable, defining moment in Canada-India relations. And since then, I know that the Canada-India trade has boomed. There's a lot of people-to-people interaction happening between Canada and India. The Canada-India relations were on upswing. But yes, this is true, unfortunately, that after change of the government, somehow the relationship could not keep up with that momentum that existed at the time of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Canada. So now, well, why this shift in this thing? You see that Indo-Canadian community is a very liberal thinking community. And I remember there was a time that, and still, I mean, the significant component of the community is involved with liberal government. Now, the question is that this visit of Prime Minister Modi and the bonhomie that existed between Prime Minister Harper and Prime Minister Modi, and I had the good fortune to have been associated with that a little closely, that changed the equations altogether. Okay. And the community came to realize that that probably a Liberal Party never invited Prime Minister of India for a bilateral visit. It's only the Conservatives and Prime Minister Harper in particular brought the sea change between Canada and India relations. So the point that I'm trying to raise in some ways is that this visit, it changed the thinking within Indo-Canadian community. And they realized that conservatives stand for Indo-Canadian community. They're helping enhance Canada-India relations, and that is good for all of us, to all Canadians and Indo-Canadian community in particular. So after Prime Minister Modi's visit, there has been, as you rightly said, there has been a slight shift, or I would say even significant shift in the political thinking of Indo-Canadian community. They are more inclined today towards Conservative Party.
Well, Dr. Kaushik, you of course have spoken about why and how the vote shift has happened. But I think a lot of the questions would also be that we have MPs from the Liberal Party. So why is it still happening if that's the case?
Yeah, that's very true, and that's a very important point. I mean, this is great that we have so many members of Parliament from Liberal Party, and quite a significant number are ministers,
Right.
and ministers in important positions. Now, that is very true. Apparently, it looks very good, and it is good for the community overall. But the point is that the aspirations of Indo-Canadian community have not been met by the Liberal Party, and you may recall the visit to India of Prime Minister Trudeau that turned into a kind of nightmare for the Indo-Canadian community, how it turned out to be. While we were expecting our relations to be on upswing, they somehow bottomed out at that point. That was neither good for Canada, not for India, and nor for the Indo-Canadian community as such. So the shift is basically the Indo-Canadian community has some expectations.
Right.
The Indo-Canadian community has some expectations from the political parties that have not yet been met by the Liberal Party, and that is why the shift happened towards Conservative Party with the hope they would help enhance Canada-India relationship, business, trade, people-to-people contact, and that would benefit Indo-Canadian community.
Basically, a leader who's going to foster the relationship between both the countries.
Absolutely, and that's what is needed, and that's what has been missing with the Liberal Party, despite so many ministers and members of Parliament.
Now, coming to the Conservative leadership, to replace Andrew Scheer, there's some big names doing the rounds, but what can you tell us about that? Who are the candidates? And in terms of deadlines, when would the names come out?
All right. Well, you see that still we have to wait. I mean, February 27 is the deadline when nominations will be filed. But the point is that there are three big names already in there.
Right.
And while you already know about the former Foreign Minister, Defense Minister Peter MacKay, who is in fact the co-founder of the Conservative Party. And then we have the Member of Parliament, Erin O'Toole, and he has thrown the hat for the party leadership. And then finally, we may hear that John Baird might drop in his candidature for the Conservative leadership. So these three big names are there. But having said that, you see, there were some other members, and I would have thought the times have changed. Probably Canada should be ready for a woman prime minister. And but somehow that some of the leaders like Rona Ambrose or Lisa Riot, they have actually moved out of the leadership race. So there's unlikely that there would be a women candidate, but we would know by February 27th who exactly are in there, and then their eligibility would also be scrutinized, and we would know about it soon in a month's time. Yes.
And that should be on March 25th for the eligibility criteria to come.
That's what I understand. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
How do you view the names in terms of the leadership? What can you see happening there?
Well, you see, this is a very serious Conservative race.
Right.
The reasons are that there are issues with regard to fiscal responsibility, the foreign policy, the immigration. There are many, many issues, the traditional values, for example, of the Conservatives. There's the rural distress. Those are many kind of issues that always come up for a Conservative leadership. And these would again be the issues. But I think the point here is that in this particular race, it is not just simply about ideology, a conservative ideology, because conservative ideology is variable. There are different groups and there are social progressives and so on. So there are lots of internal dimensions within the Conservative Party that have to be taken into consideration in a way that the entire Conservative Party comes together as a family. And that's very, very important. This is one important point that we have to consider. The second point would be that how do we have a prime minister who has a vision for Canada,
Right.
who takes us out to a new dimension. It is not simply about fighting for these small little petty things in there between liberals and conservatives, because what conservatives stand for, liberals are against those.
Right.
Okay. So we have to stay out of that kind of situation. The new conservative leader has to provide a vision. He or she has to have a charisma and has to provide a vision for Canada where what people would buy in, basically.
And taking the community forward, basically.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Not only just community, I would say the entire Canadian community. Because there are lots of, it's a changing world.
Right.
What we need is a very dynamic kind of prime minister,
Right.
Or leader of Conservative Party, who is going to make a difference to Canadians.
Now, of course, we're talking about what what you just pointed out, what a leader would be like. But the main point always is when voters are voting, what are they looking for? So, in terms of that, what are Canadians and the Canadian community looking for in their next Conservative leader party?
My sense is that Indo-Canadian community, together with the mainstream Canadian community, actually all of us, they would be looking into a person who convinces all of us that why he wants to be Prime Minister of Canada, okay, and how he's going to make a difference to the role of Canada in world affairs.
Well, when you talk about leadership, of course, it's a general overview of how we're looking at someone to take over the party. But what do you think in specific that Indo-Canadians are looking for while they're voting?
Well, yes, the Indo-Canadian community is very diverse, as we know. Yeah. But what Indo-Canadian community is looking for is the political space, that they are recognized equivalent to the mainstream Canadian community, and they have a role in the political setup of the country as such, and they can positively participate in some ways to enhance Canada and India friendship, trade, and people-to-people contact. And Indo-Canadians are also looking for their increased role through the Conservative Party and the new Conservative leader so that they can contribute for strengthening Canada.
So, Dr. Kaushik, thank you so much for joining us on this special series with us just on VNN Canada.
It's a pleasure.
Well, that was Dr. Kaushik talking to us about what the Indo-Canadian community is definitely looking forward to in their next Conservative leader. Until next time, this is Nivedana Prabhu signing off. Continue watching VNN Canada.